I would like to start by saying thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address this panel and discuss military sexual trauma, for I will not be silenced anymore. I am an Army veteran, the wife of a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel. I am the granddaughter of a decorated soldier. I am a military sexual trauma survivor. I am the author of Silence No More, a recount of my sexual assault, as well as the story of Carrie Noling and Sophie Champo, who lost their lives to the hands of military sexual trauma. I am also a former law enforcement sexual assault investigator. I have a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice, specializing in victim studies. I am here both as a victim and as an advocate. In 1982, Captain Ted Mars was stationed at Fort Eustis, Virginia, and was tasked with conducting a survey of military women on that post. His task was to determine how female soldiers were adapting to the military, were they being treated as equals. Since he felt this was a task better suited for women, he felt women would open up better to another woman, he assigned 4 female soldiers to perform this survey. Captain Mars was so enraged and mortified by the atrocities that were reported back to him, he took it upon himself to write the first zero tolerance policy. I have personally been in contact with Captain Mars. It's where I received this information. I'd like to go from there. Keep in mind that was 1982. 1986, I was 18 years old by 3 months. I had completed basic training, which no one can say they enjoy, but I will say it took me from a civilian to a soldier. I had 2 of the best drill sergeants you could ever say, and no one likes drill sergeants. I did not at the time. If they tell you they do, they're lying. Those gentlemen taught us what honor, courage, strength, loyalty was about. I loved the military. I came from a broken home, an abusive home. I found a place I belonged until I reached Fort Eustis, Virginia. I was on that installation not even 1 week when we were at our supply, been issued our gear. My platoon's drill sergeant went inside to see where we were at in order. While he was gone, I was called out of formation by a male drill sergeant. Any of you that have been in the military know it's bad enough to be called out by your own drill sergeant or sergeant, much less one you do not even know. All you can think of is, what have I done? Your whole mind, your heart races, you're terrified. And as I run over to this drill sergeant and stand at attention, I was rather shocked when he asked me where I was from. Couldn't fathom. I replied, Texas. His comment was, that's what I thought. I heard you talking and I love that southern accent. My sergeant came back outside and yelled for me to return to formation, which I did. We went in and was issued our equipment. I never gave it another thought of being called out until 4 days later, while I was laying in my bunk reading a letter from my husband, who was also a soldier at Fort Sam Houston training. A female enlisted came in with a note that told me I was to report to the first sergeant's office. Again, all you can think of is terror. I had no idea why I was being called there, but fear is drilled in you from day one. I reported to the office. There was no one in the outer office. If you've been in the military, well, it's kind of like a CEO. You have your secretaries that sit out there and your office is in the back. There was no one there. As I walked in, I was told to enter. I walk in, and the first sergeant is sitting there. And it's the male who had called me out of formation that day. He had just replaced our former first sergeant who was being held over on rape charges. I was told to report for a special duty. Later that night at 9 o'clock, we would be wearing PT gear, and I was dismissed. I went back to my room, finished the letter to my husband, and reported for duty. When I arrived there, it was actually a room that was 2 doors down from my dorm room. I knocked on it, there was no answer. I knocked again, no answer. I tried the door handle, opened it, and there was a dark room. I reached in to turn a light on and was grabbed by my arm and pulled into that room. I was pushed against a brick wall. As I was being told, he had not stopped thinking about me since he heard me talk the first day. It was then I realized who was in that room with me. And it was in that room, during a thunderstorm, I was raped for the first time. And I say the first time because I was under his command for another 7 weeks. I was threatened that he would ruin my husband and I's military career. We come from poor families. We are the first of both of our families to even graduate high school. This was our opportunity to go to college, to change our lives, to be better. I was threatened that if I said anything, my husband and I would never serve at the same base. And the ultimate threat was he would hold me over and recycle me, which would put me under his command for another 8 weeks. But you see, even with all of the threats, I did speak out. I told my husband, whose advice was to keep quiet, because it was a few weeks out of the rest of our life. I called an uncle who was a master sergeant serving in Korea, who advised me that if I wanted to stay in the military, that I would keep quiet and go to my next base. So I kept quiet, and I was an exemplary soldier. I served until my husband was killed by a drunk driver. I was 6 months pregnant and a 2.5-year-old and got out. I've raised my children. I've gotten a college degree. But I never spoke of those rapes until 1990. I went to the head of the women's department at the Houston VA because I was having depression, nightmares. I can't even begin to describe the things. I was informed there were no programs to help me. She recommended I go to AA meetings. I do not drink. I did not drink. But that was the help that was offered, AA meetings. I did not speak again until September 2012, when I was sitting in my room with a gun to my head. I couldn't take the pain anymore. My husband cannot walk up behind me and hug me without giving me warning because I startle. He's currently a contractor in Afghanistan. When he's gone, I sleep with the loaded gun on the pillow next to me. I spent 3 years in my home. I could not leave. I had a teenage son who became my chauffeur when my husband was gone. This child spent his young adult days driving me back and forth to doctor's appointments, psychiatrists, did the grocery shopping because I couldn't be out in public. So you see, for the panel that sit here before me, a few minutes ago, I would like to say this. There is one major fact that is being overlooked. From the very day you enter the military, submission is drilled into you. You are told you do not challenge ranking NCOs or officers. There was no one in my chain of command that I knew nor felt comfortable enough to tell what happened to me. Had I had anyone at that time that I could have gone to, I wouldn't have been silenced for 26 years. I have grown children that I am trying to build bonds with that should have been done when they were children. But because of disassociation, I was not able to give them the nurturing love that they deserved. I'm a 46-year-old woman who is learning what it means to be compassionate with my children. My children were raised with what was drilled in me. Put your big girl panties on, get up, and move on. My children frequently referred to me as the Ice Queen because I don't show emotions. I don't show love. I don't show hate. I'm just me. The panel before me sat here and said that the chain of command is equipped to deal with this. I say it's not. Had I told my platoon sergeant, he would have had to report it to the chain of command, to my first sergeant, my rapist. How could I feel secure in reporting it, not to keep in mind the threats and the intimidation? How could I have received fair and just investigation when my chain of command included my rapist? I'd like to move on to 1996, Aberdeen Proving Grounds. After the scandal broke, retired Colonel Ned Mars was interviewed by People magazine, in which the study that was conducted in 1982 was discussed. The zero tolerance policy he had written 14 years earlier. It is now 2014, 32 years after that policy was written, and we are still given lip service to zero tolerance and the command's ability to control and reduce the alarming rate of military sexual assault. Clearly, zero tolerance has not and is not effective. The military is not just about its leaders. It is not just about the command. It needs to focus and care as much about the lower enlisted and officers. It was suggested by the gentleman on the end, I didn't catch his name, I'm sorry, that we give the chain of command another chance. I say 32 years. Actually, if you look at it, much longer than that was enough of a chance. If we give them another 5 years, if we do that, at the current rate of 26,000 sexual assaults that was reported in 2012, we are allowing a minimum of another 130,000 soldiers to be potentially assaulted while the command attempts to prove it can be effective in what it has failed at for the last 50 years. Facts show us that the majority of reports do not even reach the higher command out of fear of intimidation, retaliation, humiliation, and potentially death, as in Carrie Nolan and Sophie Champignon cases, the two women I talk about in my book. These are the reasons I support Senator Gillibrand and the Military Justice Improvement Act for removing the convening authority. Zero tolerance is not a new phrase. It's not a new policy. It's been around at least 32 years. It has not worked. It will not work. I do not think that the commanders deserve another 130,000 victims so that they can prove they can do something that they have not managed to do in the last 34 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. I want to just say it's very important that you came here today and that we were able to hear what happened to you. And I appreciate that it couldn't have been easy for you.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am, next is Miss Jenny Lee, also from Arkansas.
Good evening.